Good morning, everyone. Thanks for coming. My name is Josh Minkler. I'm the United States Attorney for the Southern District of Indiana. We've called a press conference to announce some significant investigative and prosecution activity here in the Southern District of Indiana. I'm going to talk to you a little bit about that, and then I'm going to recognize Drug Enforcement Administration Assistant Special Agent in Charge, Mike Gannon, who will also make some comments to you. Let me introduce some people to you that are present, that participated in this investigation, that will not be speaking. From the United States Postal Inspection Service, we have DeMarcus Calhoun. He's down at the end of the line there. From the Indiana State Police, we have Sergeant Matt Ames, who works at the Putnamville Post. Matt, thanks for coming. From the Terre Haute Police Department, we have the Assistant Chief, Matt Carden. From the Vigo County Drug Task Force, we have Chief Sean Keene, Captain Jason Brentlanger, and Sergeant Charles Burris. From the Vigo County Sheriff's Department, we have Chief Deputy Steve Ming. From the Clay County Sheriff's Department, we have the Sheriff, Paul Harden. Also present is the Assistant United States Attorney who will be prosecuting this case, taking the case into court, Kendra Klump, and she's here with us today. So I'll talk a little bit about the case, and then let Assistant Special Agent in Charge Gannon talk a little bit about the case. And then if we have time, we'll take some questions. Does that work for everybody? Okay. So the topic that we're here to talk about is to announce an investigation and prosecution of an organized drug trafficking ring here in the Southern District of Indiana. Last Tuesday, December 10th, 2019, a group of federal, state, and local law enforcement officers throughout the state executed numerous federal search and arrest warrants. This was the culmination of a 6.5 month investigation into organized drug trafficking here in the Southern District of Indiana. Federal charges have been returned by a grand jury in the form of 2 indictments. Those 2 indictments name 15 individuals. The 2 indictments have been provided for you, as well as a press release which provides the ages, names, and residences of the individuals who were indicted. Today, the streets of the Southern District of Indiana are safer than they were 6 months ago. 2 organizations with the goal of infesting both large and small towns in this district have been dismantled. Among the towns that these organizations wanted to infest methamphetamine with are Terre Haute, Indiana, Brazil, Indiana, Gosport, Indiana, Muncie, Indiana, and Anderson, Indiana. Today, the streets of those communities are safer than they were 6 months ago. The men and women standing up here alongside me represent a coalition of state, federal, and local law enforcement officers. And they are responsible for taking drug dealers off the streets, for taking multiple pounds of methamphetamine off our streets, for taking illegally possessed guns off our streets, and for taking drug money, the illegal proceeds of drug trafficking, off our streets. So to contrast, I'm talking about 2 organizations. The first of those organizations and groups distribute methamphetamine for profit to the people in our small towns. And I don't need to tell you about the devastation that people have experienced as a result of methamphetamine distribution and addiction here in Western Indiana. That's the first organization. The second organization is a group of men and women with the goal of making the Southern District of Indiana and Vigo County particularly the most inhospitable place in the country to sell drugs. Today, I can announce that the organization standing here has achieved a significant victory. The first indictment describes a 9-member outfit operating out of Terre Haute, led by Tavares Hutcherson, AKA T. And that indictment describes significant methamphetamine deals and methamphetamine that was seized by law enforcement. It describes a May 23rd, 2019 seizure of approximately 49 grams of methamphetamine. It describes a July 30 seizure from Mr. Matthews, AKA Pee-wee, of 25 grams of methamphetamine. It describes the seizure on October 24th, 2019, again from Mr. Matthews, also known as Pee-wee, of 218 grams. That's nearly a half pound of methamphetamine. The indictment alleges a September 19th, 2019 seizure from Brad Jones of 1.4 kilograms, or almost 3 pounds of methamphetamine, which is intended for the leader, Mr. Hutcherson. It also alleges a seizure of 545 grams, more than a pound of methamphetamine, seized, taken off the streets, methamphetamine that will not be on the streets, that will not be redistributed, that will not go to our families, to our children. It just will not be on the streets. Thanks again to the hard work of these individuals. According to this indictment, as well as methamphetamine, firearms were possessed. On August 24th, 2019, as well as methamphetamine, the indictment alleges Mr. Matthews was in possession of guns. On September 19th, 2019, as well as in possession of meth, the indictment alleges Mr. Jones was in possession of 2 firearms and ammunition. The other organization, consisting of 6 members, had the goal of distributing methamphetamine in Brazil, Indiana, and Gosport, Indiana, among other areas. The leader of that organization is identified as James Briscoe, also known as Muncie. Again, significant quantities of methamphetamine taken off the streets. 3.3 kilograms, or nearly 7 pounds of methamphetamine taken off of Brad Sepulane. 1.3 kilograms, almost 3 pounds of methamphetamine taken off of Jason Pugh, which was shipped from California. Similarly, in this case, there were also firearms present, as alleged in the indictment. Jamar Bell and James Bell, also known as P-Bone, on November 18th, 2019, a 9mm pistol, a shotgun, as well as almost $10,000 in drug proceeds were seized. On December 10th, 2019, just last week, from Mr. Page, 2 pistols, an AK-47 style rifle, and almost $3,000 in drug proceeds taken off the streets. Again, to make this simple, guns, drugs, and drug money taken off the streets of our towns that will never be used again. I'd like to make some observations about this case. First of all, in terms of the seizure of drugs. In total, we're talking about nearly $250,000 worth of methamphetamine that will not be on the streets of our town. We're talking about towns both large and small. A town like Terre Haute with more than 60,000 residents, but also towns like Brazil with 8,000 residents. That methamphetamine will not be in our community. And as you know, all people want in those communities is a safe place to work, to live, and to raise their families. And methamphetamine interferes with that. It interferes with a simple and right life. And that methamphetamine has been taken off of our streets. A large seizure of drugs, which will have a major impact, a positive impact on the streets of our community. Second of all, and there's some photographs up here of the firearms seized. The mixture of guns and drugs is not coincidental, and it is not a safe mixture. Drug dealing is a business. It's an illegal business, but it is a business. Drugs, in this case and others, are often fronted. And what I mean by fronted, they're advanced, the drugs are advanced on credit with an agreement to pay for the drugs later. But what happens when you don't pay for the drugs? Can you go into a court and allege breach of contract? That can't be done. They are operating outside the law. They are operating illegally. So the only way you can enforce your contracts is with violence or the threat of violence. And that's why these guns are present, and present with money and present with drugs. So not only taking methamphetamine off the streets makes our community safer, but taking guns off the street. It's no secret that the distribution of methamphetamine and the distribution of methamphetamine along with firearms is what fuels some of the violence that this country is experiencing. Again, these people standing to my left, your right, have worked together to make our district safer. I also want to talk about the drugs and the drug money. As alleged in this indictment, the drugs were shipped from California. The drugs were coming here to be redistributed. The purpose of sending the drugs here was to get money. The drugs came here, the money went back. But let's call that money what it is. It's blood money. And it's money, again, that we seized, that we put a stop to. So in summary, the news today is very good. The fight against organized drug trafficking continues in this case and across this district by this fine group, this collection of federal, state, and local partners. I've, as the United States Attorney, traveled many places in the country, met with other United States attorneys, and I will tell you, here, particularly in Vigo County, we have something special. And that is a group of individuals who are dedicated to a mission, each person dedicated to a mission of making this community safer. And today, I'm happy to announce that they have. I would like to introduce Mike Gannon. Mike certainly doesn't do this by himself. He does it with a fine collection of law enforcement partners. But in this federal case, the Drug Enforcement Administration was the lead federal agency. And so, Mike, thank you for your work, and I'll recognize you for some comments.
Thank you. First and foremost, I would like to thank the U.S. Attorney for the outstanding remarks and the outstanding dedication of service that his office had with this investigation, specifically AUSA Klump for her outstanding job. And to stand up here today and to talk about a case like this never happens unless you have the collaborative effort with every law enforcement partner that we have. So I'd like to thank each and every one of you guys that contributed to this investigation, because we would never have had the results that we had. You have an investigation that we worked nearly 6 months, and we seized almost 23 pounds of methamphetamine throughout the investigation. We arrested 15 individuals federally, and you get 15 firearms. Do you know the number of firearms when you think about that and the amount of dope that we got off the streets? It's just an incredible job. And you have to think about this. I couldn't agree more with what U.S. Attorney Minkler said. People want to live in a community that's safe, healthy. They want to do the things. They want to raise families. Just like each and every one of you out there, we have families, we have kids, we have children, we want to be in safe environments. And if you have people preying on people with methamphetamine and poisoning communities, they need to be held accountable. And I think this case is a perfect example of the wingspan of drug trafficking organizations, even here in Indiana. We understand where the methamphetamine's coming. We know it's coming from Mexico. We know it's tied in with CJNG and the Sinaloa cartels, and they're flooding our communities in the United States here with methamphetamine. And we're going to do everything we can to make our community a safer place. So for all you drug traffickers out there, just understand, you may be dealing drugs today. We're going to put all our resources together at the highest levels, and we're going to steamroll you, and you're going to be held accountable for your actions. And I'd like to thank you for your time. Thank you.
So to be clear, the 15 individuals named in these 2 indictments are currently in federal custody. Most of them were arrested last week. Hearings in court are ongoing, but they have been federally arrested and are currently in federal custody, and this investigation is continuing. So I have to be sort of cryptic about what I can talk about in terms of the future, but I'm happy to take any questions to tell you what I can about this case.
Can you tell me how the Postal Service is involved? Were they mailing it directly?
Yeah, parcels were of methamphetamine were shipped through the United States mail, among other ways.
And how did you know that? Is that like a thing where you...
We do investigation, we figure it out, and then we can intercept it.
Can you clarify again the amount of drug money that was recovered?
Sure. Well, I talked about 2 specific seizures, and let me give you the specifics on that because they're in the indictment. Look at my notes here. On November 18th, 2019, this is off of James Bell, a.k.a. P-Bone. Nearly $10,000 in drug proceeds, as well as some firearms. And then off of Damian Page, nearly $3,000 in drug proceeds, as well as some pistols and an AK-47 assault rifle. So those are significant cash seizures. People, you know, there's certainly been a lot of discussion in the community about all we're doing is going after drug addicts. That's not the case here. We're not looking to prosecute drug addicts. I should make that absolutely clear. DEA and the U.S. Attorney's Office completely in agreement that drug addiction is a serious problem and it needs to be dealt with, and if you're a drug addict, you should get treatment. But that's not what we're talking about here. We're talking about people that are selling drugs, that are pushing this poison that caused that devastation for money. And that's a different matter altogether. Those people will be targeted federally, they will be investigated, and they will be prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law, and that's what we're doing here. So that's why I wanted to talk a little bit about the money. Certainly there was money going back and forth, drugs going back and forth. We didn't get it all, but these are the significant seizures that I can report to you today.
And you mentioned nearly $250,000 of meth that you
Of
say-
product, yeah,
okay.
sure.
So you're saying 23 pounds of meth is worth $250,000?
It is, yeah,
13,000 in cash and then 15 firearms.
that's correct.
How has this landscape kind of changed? I mean, you know, methamphetamine used to be something that was mostly locally made, and now we're talking about it being distributed from Mexico to California through the U.S. Postal Service. How does that change investigations?
Sure. Well, that's a great question. I've been doing this for a while, right, since 1994, and at least and I'm not sure about this case, I know the purities of methamphetamine in this case were very, very, very high. And so we had local methamphetamine labs, which were dangerous just because methamphetamine labs are dangerous. But the product that was produced by the local methamphetamine labs were very, very low purity and wasn't that good. As Assistant Special Agent in Charge Gannon talked about, in this country, most of the methamphetamine is manufactured in super labs in Mexico. It is then smuggled across the border and destined for small towns in the Midwest. It's a highly addictive product. So the landscape has changed in that we have a much purer, in my opinion, more addictive form of methamphetamine that is flooding this country. It's a great challenge for us. Opioids, heroin get a lot of the attention, and they should. It's resulted in a lot of overdose deaths. But for this district, the Southern District of Indiana, the #1 drug that we seize and that we prosecute is methamphetamine. But I'll let Mike, do you have some thoughts on how the landscape has changed on methamphetamine?
Yeah, just to reiterate what was said, obviously it's being manufactured in the super labs in Mexico, and it's creatively being smuggled through the border and into our communities, and the purity's at the highest levels it's ever been. So it's an addictive drug, and you get predators preying on individuals with substance abuse problems, and they're flooding the markets. But we're going to do everything we can to combat that. And you know what we've done as DEA, we're able to open a brand new office here in Terre Haute and provide our resources here full time. And we look forward to continuing to work with our partners to take on the challenge of individuals who are distributing methamphetamine and other poisons into our community.
And speaking for our office and these gentlemen in front of me, we understand that drugs coming across the border is a tremendous problem, but I'm interested in the Southern District of Indiana. I'm slightly parochial in the way I approach this. My goal is to make the Southern District of Indiana, and everybody's goal, the most inhospitable place to sell drugs. So hopefully drugs are not distributed to our small towns. You know, move on through, take it someplace else, right? But if you're here and you're selling drugs, we're coming after you with everything we got. Any other questions? Thank you.